Good afternoon, everyone. We are back for our Beers and Friday. I am Kyle. I just fill the space on this side of the screen. And of course, the important person is Jade, who's joining me from the lovely Lennox today.
Yeah, we're at Lennox Point. It's glassy, but a gentleman just got out of the surf talking about the shark, and then that he was like, "Oh, there's sharks out there, but I want to go fishing, but I don't have my fishing rod," and it bumped me, and I was like, "Yeah, nah."
Nice.
So
Nice.
as glassy as it looks, I might give that a miss for now.
That's no fun. Well, it's still, I think, 4 or 5 foot here,
Yep.
and cold.
Well,
And I
I was
think
literally,
for me, the cold is worse than the sharks.
probably. I don't know if you can see. I've got the Uggies on, and I was like, I was just standing here. The sun's burning the back of my legs. I'm like, maybe the Uggies need to go. I've been cold up until now, and then just as we've gone live, like the sun's like melting me.
Beaming out. Of course. That's
Yeah.
because you're in the hot seat.
I'm in the hot seat. Uh-oh.
Not really.
Not really? Not really?
So you brought up sharks. So here's a funny question to think about. If a shark bites someone with COVID,
Oh,
does it get COVID?
it's now shark flu. We've had bird
I
flu, we've
don't
had
know.
swine flu, we've got the bat flu, shark flu. And then what
Shark flu.
happens? Okay, wait. And then do they infect the fishes? And then if you eat the fish, whoa! I like this.
Just a
topic.
funny question.
That's a funny question. Let's see if we can find a
is.
marine biologist or some sort of scientific person that might be able to, like, tell us if it can be transmitted to another animal. Well, you would think if it came from a bat to us, that maybe a human to a shark via bite. It's the eating thing. It seemed like logical to me.
Seems logical. So
Okay, I'm going to send a notice
I
to
had
all the
an
sharks
interest.
not to eat us because COVID.
That's right. We're dangerous. So a friend of mine is allergic to fish, and so he posed a similar question: if he got bitten by a shark while surfing, would he bleed out, or would the anaphylaxis kill him?
I don't mean to laugh, but it's an
It's an
interesting
interesting question,
idea.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So maybe we've distracted ourselves a little bit. So today we're talking about responding, not reacting, and how we can lead our teams, I guess, under pressure. So it's an interesting conversation to have. Maybe not with the pressure of a shark on us.
No. Well, I'm going to wind back for a second because just before we went live, I felt your energy was a little flat for the usual Kyle that I get. And I said, "How are you?" And then you went, "Well," and then we went, "Actually, this might be a question to ask when we're live because it's quite relevant." So, Kyle, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I noticed last night, I reflected a little bit on our chat yesterday with the team. I was a bit snappy with one of the boys, and last week I was snappy with one of the boys,
I think one of them told you not to get
and
your knickers in a twist.
something like that. And I've probably been a bit snappy with other people in my life. I've probably snapped at the kids earlier in the week, and it left me thinking, a bit of reflection. Normally I'm a bit calmer than that.
You're
So
normally calm, Kyle. You're
I'm,
also
I'm
Kyle the
normally
corruptor,
pretty
but
good. Not this week. I'm on
no
Alkagizer
beers.
this week.
No beers.
No beers. No beers Friday this week.
No beers Friday. Yay.
But the Alkagizer leads into next week's podcast, doesn't it?
It sure does. Ooh,
We might
I'm
come
wondering
back to that.
is there some sort of connection here? Are you about to give me some connection of why you're snappy and Alkagizer's no alcohol?
Ooh, it could be. So it's all about leading the team, and for us in the business, we've had a few rocky lumps that have just just been difficult. They haven't necessarily been hard or bad or anything like that. They've just been difficult. Things like rerouting a staff member through so he doesn't have to go to Melbourne on his flights and with COVID and all that sort of stuff.
At the last minute, because he was about to get on a
At the
plane.
last minute.
Yeah.
And, delaying training. And so it's just been, difficult, I guess. And so the reflection last night was, why is the snap happening? And obviously there's a lot of things sitting in the background that don't actually relate to the conversation that I had in the room yesterday or last week, or even, with the kids on Monday. But it's just now hitting that threshold. And the food is a part of it, and the alcohol is a part of it. And this is, I guess, why I said it would be a good question while we're live talking about this stuff. Is the response, not the reaction. And really the distinction about being able to respond instead of react is not being above threshold.
Yeah. Not needing just one straw to break the camel's back.
Yeah, and I was even chatting with someone, a friend that they're going through a diagnosis around ASD with one of their kids. And talking about this morning we had a meltdown because it was light. And I said, that's just the one thing that was able to be seen and identified as a stressor. Whereas probably what's happened is it's built up, and it could be something from 2 or 3 days ago that's now led to this kid in overwhelm waking up to light.
Yeah.
And we're no different. So, we have all these stresses in our life, and food is one of them if we don't eat well. Alcohol is another one, even if we only have one beer, one glass of wine. Too much sunshine, not enough sunshine, no exercise, too much exercise. There's all these things that add stresses into our world that, as we layer them up, bring us to that threshold and stop us from being able to respond.
Yeah. And it just turns into a knee-jerk reaction of pent-up energy and frustration. It's like when you've got the pressure valve, right? And it's like sitting right on the edge, and it's waiting to be released.
Absolutely. And it's hard for our teammates around us because they don't see everything that's going on. They don't know what's going on in our world. And if we're leading a team, even for them, they don't know the other things that are pressuring us. And I guess we tend to roll into reacting rather than responding.
Yeah.
So that's the long answer to how am I this week.
I love it. So I see you're on the alkalizers. So are you in Deep Spring?
I'm moving towards Deep Spring.
Okay. Have you cut the sugar?
So the sugar's gone. My diet's usually pretty good on sugar anyway.
Yep.
And I certainly notice a big effect on me with sugar.
Yep.
And funnily enough, my kids as well. It's amazing how it changes them when they've had too much sugar. So yeah, sugar's out, alcohol's out at the moment. Just trying to clean things up and reduce some of those stresses because I have control of those.
Yeah, and I think as you mentioned, next week on the podcast we've got Eric Edmeades from WildFit. So I'm super excited to go through some of the stuff with him. I've had some pre-submitted questions that will help on some of this stuff too, in terms of how to deal with that with kids. But one of the key things, like you and I really know from doing WildFit and as leaders, the garbage in, garbage out sort of mentality with our food. But what I don't think a lot of leaders realize is the effect of nutrition on their ability to lead. and stabilize their energy and the energy that they radiate. When you've got, I know that one of your core things for the last 2 weeks is less caffeine, more move.
Yep.
And because we really do, our energy and our radiation and how we even communicate when we're overly caffeinated, and running from that sort of enhanced state, that's right. I want to say intoxicated state, but not quite. But
Well, it is, isn't it?
It's not our true state. It's an enhanced or an adjusted state, and then we don't always make the right decisions. We're running a bit fast. It's not really from who we are at a core, because it is changing your behaviors. But the same thing with sugar, with the sugar crashes. You know, I always say, like, I don't eat lunch, often because I just don't feel hungry because I fast. But one of the things is I crash really bad when I eat. So, and I'm looking at this at the moment, and actually I want to go deeper in this with Eric. Yeah, I might have to do that. Just because I'm not sure if the fasting has done something to me, so that when I break fast, my body goes into overwhelm to process, because the food that I'm eating isn't bad food, like it's WildFit food, but I literally I say I feel like I'm powering down, like the Energizer Bunny is running out because my body's gone into trying to process the food. And so if we can really recognize that, so I know that I'm no good, like if I've got a podcast after lunch, like I would never eat lunch and do a podcast, because I literally go into this sleepy, shut downy mode, and I've got to play with this and kind of look at, like, going through that diary process again. Like, okay, is it when I eat protein, is that what's powering me down, or is it something else? Because I used to suffer from irritable bowel, irritable gut, so like certain vegetables used to literally send me under my desk for a nap. Peanuts, oh my god, peanuts, I'd be out cold on the ground, like the processing. But I wonder how many business leaders really, or even parents, really think about that relation, because a lot of them go, oh, I got the 3:30 crash, but they just think that that's like a common thing, but they haven't gone, oh, that's because I had coffee up until 12 and now the caffeine's leaving my system, or I had something that, like, people don't realize that, like, if they have a bacon and egg McMuffin or some sort of white bread breakfast or even lunch, the amount of sugar that's in that.
Yeah.
Who was it yesterday? Someone taught me yesterday, I can't even think now. Someone taught me yesterday that one more scoop of one more teaspoon. Was it you? One more scoop
So the
of
kids
sugar
at
makes.
school were being taught.
Oh yeah, that was because when we were talking to Amy with McDonald's. Yeah.
Yep. The McDonald's. One
So
more
what is it?
teaspoon of sugar in a McDonald's bun makes it confectionery.
Yeah. Wow. Right? So, but people don't necessarily realize that, okay, actually the 3:30 crash isn't just that it's been X amount of time since I slept. It's actually a result of the sugars that I've eaten that I may not have realized I've eaten, or the caffeine that's aborting my system, or the toxins because I had one too many wines last night.
Yeah. Yeah. And how that affects all the decisions that you make,
Yeah.
and how that affects the interactions that you have with your team.
100%.
You know, I got to 3:30 and I crashed, but what did I do for the 3 hours before that?
Yeah. And yeah, were you snapping back answers? Were you actually present? Were you thinking cognitively through an actual decision? Or were you rushing? Like, you know, when you're on, like, if you're on a caffeine high, you're kind of in that manic, and you're like, yeah, everything's fucking awesome. And you're making the decisions from that really sometimes over-optimistic mind. Or if you're on the crash, from a pessimistic mind.
Nothing's happening quick enough, and
Yeah.
let's just go to the next thing, go to the next thing, go to the next thing. And, you know, I know for myself, I do actually enjoy it to some extent. The go, 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 go.
Yeah.
I know the team doesn't, but I do.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's into if we think about the profile types as well. So this is actually, that's great. This is something that's really important. So being that you're a star creator, super high energy, like do go, 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 probably like me, borderline. Well, I'm not borderline. I'm diagnosed ADD, but like, I try to manage it as best as I can. No sugar. But because we operate at that level, we don't realize what that could do to other people. And we had a perfect example with one of your team. They are completely the opposite profile to us, like on the pole, like literally across the diagonal of the profile square. Far more, and although I'm OCD as fuck, and he's happy to wear that as a badge, but needs the detail, needs the timing, needs to have pacing, but especially the things that trigger him are things around time, because he's got that tempo energy, he's got the steel steadiness and compliant, and then layered with the OCD of needing to have things in a cadence, just saying like something that's nothing to us because we pivot fast and that happened, and actually I thought I was respecting you by not messaging you on your weekend and your holiday, turned into a holy shit reaction. Right? So it wasn't there was no opportunity to respond on his end at that time, because he was just in that state of all of these things sent me to blow up. And after we talked about it, it was like, oh yeah. But so we need to look at, I think, not only where we react rather than respond, but understanding our people and their triggers and their buttons, and how we can help them to understand it so that things don't happen in the future. But most importantly, for the harmony of the team, not when it's not okay to push their buttons, or how you could not push their buttons until we work through it.
For me, I know I can control things like my caffeine, my alcohol, my food, my movement, my sleep. I've got control of all of those things. And if I've got control of all those things and they're serving me well, that helps me to manage the things that I don't have in control. So if we've got team members that are pushing the boundaries or at their threshold, what we can do as a leader is we can control the things we can control. Now, I can't control what they eat and I can't control what they drink and all of those sorts of things, but I can make sure that, if they need timing, we've got timing for them. If we've got to communicate, if we've got to use words of affirmation, all of those things that we can notice and we can control might help keep them under threshold and make their life a little bit easier.
Yeah, perfect. Because if we look at like those profile types, I love that you talked about words of affirmation, because when we look at teams and the stuff that we control and how we can get the best out of them, make them ultimately happy, we use a couple of different testing and profiling to understand the human. So the talent dynamics, wealth dynamics for the general profile types. So whether they're like a big picture creator, sort of thinker, fast running, whether they're blaze and a real people person, a bit extroverted and love that high energy, whether they're tempo, that grounded timing, like customer servicey sort of energy, or steel, where they're much more slower to make decisions, needing to see the detail, more about the compliance, and a little bit more would be perceived as introverted. But then we talk about the love languages. So like you just said, that like, do they need words of affirmation to feel heard and seen? Do they need physically like a pat on the back, like, because they don't necessarily always hear the words, they need like a physical tap on the back for a physical touch.
Slap on the ass.
A slap on the bum. Little bottom tap. Careful of the workplace, please. Whether it's quality time, they need to have your attention, know that you've got, even if it's just for a minute, but they've got your presence. So if they come into your office, you're not like doing this still while they're talking to you. Like just that one thing of looking up and giving them full presence for 1 minute changes everything. So acts of service, bringing them a coffee or doing something for them. And we see this a lot with
yes, bring me more coffee.
Don't bring Kyle more coffee. I'm taking off my boots. I'm hot. But we often hear with your team when they spread gratitude and love on the rest of them, when it's someone else has done something to help them, because quality acts of service is high for a couple, and it's like, oh, they jumped in and did this for me and they supported me. So when you can understand the different personality types and profile types so that they can feel seen and heard, or where the triggers or the buttons might be, So,
Yep.
and
Yep.
gifts was another one in there. But so if we know someone's primary love language is quality time, and their profile type is around tempo, timing, compliance, and they they feel like their time has been disrespected, or they haven't been given enough time to think, or they're not given enough time, because leaning on the seal side, to have all of the boxes ticked to feel like they're going to be able to do a good job. That energy raises, and then one thing that shouldn't be a thing, kaboom.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so what did you take out of like that experience? Like, what do you think that we can do, or what can we impart, say, either on like leaders of engineering teams or like other business owners? What can they take from that?
It's super common. I know with a lot of our students that are in the higher end programs, so the diploma, advanced diploma programs, where they're in leadership roles, and so they're almost the meat in the sandwich. They're trying to run a team, and often they may have come out of that team, so they're friends, so to speak. But on the other side of that, because of the culture of the workplace, they're in a regular ass kicking. So, it's not a weekly meeting of what did we achieve. It's a weekly meeting of who are we going to kick and how hard are we going to kick
Yeah.
them. And so it's probably really, really important that if you are in that role, you are the meat in the sandwich, and you actually have to be the buffer from the team and not react to the stuff that's coming down on top of you, but also not pass it on, and take control of it, and make sure that you're dealing with that bit in the middle there, so that you can respond to your team, look after them, and get the most out of them.
I bumped into someone yesterday that was at our Future Seeds event last week, and she was talking about, the fish rots from the head down, and exactly what you're talking about, right? So if it's the waterfall effect, the pressure at the top comes down, comes down, comes down, and like we can make the choice to put the blocker in. Like if the gangrene's traveling up the line, we're going to cut it off. So it's where we really need to act intentionally, but it's really where we need to understand our own triggers and buttons, and think about what's going to get the best reaction or response that we want from the team. So rather than just, if you've been yelled at coming in and yelling, is like, how do you feel? So if you stop and think about how you just felt through that experience, if you go and do it to someone else, had insanity to think that they're going to get a different response.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always talk with the guys that we're training, and I say to them, think through the years that you've worked and the teams that you've worked in, and that one person that you worked for that you just got the best out of you for no reason at all. Yeah, you always did more for them. Their whole team always went above and beyond. They always achieved the most. And what was it that they did for you that was different? Because we all know that person that we worked for, that you go, wow, I'd love to be working back for them. They
Yeah.
were amazing. So yeah, think back through it, and a lot of it is all of that stuff where they were the shield to some extent. They just they looked after you. They encouraged, not berated, all of those sorts of things, and got the most out of the team.
Yeah.
And then how do you do that yourself?
Yeah. And so I think that's a great point for people to sit down and journal on and really think about that. Like, go back and challenge yourself. And it could even be like a school teacher, a mentor, a someone from your external, like a friend that helps you always step up, and that you're like, okay, what is it that they do for me? How is it
Absolutely.
that they handle
And
the situations? A football coach, a captain of your sporting team, like you can look to these role models to see the common thread there.
yeah, and there's commonality in it. There is something to see in it, and it does work. There are traits that these people put forward, and if we look, I think if we sort of get down to, to stay on theme a little bit, the things that they do to look after themselves. And, I know for me, when I think about those people, they're probably always the people that were active.
Mm-hmm.
They had a sport, or they ran, they cycled, they were physically active, and they were, I think that's a very, very common trait across all of the ones that I can think of. They were active. They looked after themselves physically.
Yeah. Well, they say healthy body, healthy mind, right? If your body isn't functioning the way it should, your mind is trying to control everything to keep it functioning. Like, and it just sucks your energy. Like, there's that drain there. That makes perfect sense. We also know that movement gives us the energy. It clears our head. It gets rid of the stressors. It's the releasing of the dopamine and all of that elevates us as well. And they've done a study. I think it was Michelle Crawford that I was talking to about this, about all of the like top 100 CEOs and business leaders, and
Yep.
the core habits, behaviors, and routines that are common against all of them. People thought it was like 5 a.m. club or super early. That is a common-ish one, but beyond that is that they carve time in the morning to spend on themselves, and the exercise piece being a non-negotiable.
Yep.
And it doesn't need to be hard.
Yep.
Like, for some of them, it's not hardcore exercise. It's just like they go for a walk.
Hmm.
But
Yep.
it's
Go
that
for a
piece.
walk. Go
Yeah.
for a swim. Look at the sunrise. Yeah. Just be moving.
Yeah, just be moving. I think that because it gets us back into our body and out of our thoughts is a big part.
Definitely.
Um, but also, I think it's because we're telling ourselves we're safe and secure because we're able to spend a little bit of time refilling our cup, not just constantly reacting and servicing and rushing for everybody else. So I think there's a whole layer of psychology behind it that we don't necessarily understand besides being fit and healthy. Because sometimes
Absolutely.
some of these people we look at, they may not look like the picture of perfect health, but it's still that they're doing that thing that's keeping their mind moving forward.
So the bit in the middle was, we know that exercise reduces stress, and anything that we can do to reduce stress in our body is obviously good for us. It helps us, and it helps get us below that threshold. And things that the thing that we can control is, I can go and exercise. That helps reduce that threshold, and so therefore I'm going to react or respond better with my team.
Yeah, beautiful. So if we think about our teams though, what's some ideas that we could do to help? Like you said, we can't tell them what to eat. We can't tell them not to drink. We can't force them to do activity outside of the office or outside of what we're doing. What do you reckon we could do to within the business to maybe bring a little bit more movement in?
It's all about offering opportunities. So it can be as simple as a stand-up desk, or some sort of change location kind of thing. We've finally put up a basketball hoop outside. That's a fairly common morning tea and lunchtime exercise. The boys have
We
a
also have a
a
gym in
trophy.
the workshop.
We do have a gym in the workshop that we're making a bit more space around, so it's permanently set up. The basketball hoop comes with a trophy, so the boys play for a trophy. I think Giles 5 from 5 at the moment, and
I,
holding that trophy
did we tell
proud.
everyone what that trophy was? I know we did it on one of our
I'm not,
calls.
I'm not sure that I should.
It's a bit of fun. Well,
It is. It is.
what I love about that is one of my other clients, we just redid their company virtue. So we're going through a similar process to what we did with the APT team, looking at the purpose, the mission, the 5-year obsession, the virtues. How do we live this? And what we found was there's a disconnect. There was this high value of health from the leaders, but a lot of the team building activities was defaulted to what other teams do, which is like go out for pizza and beer. And there was
Yep.
people not coming, and it wasn't really, there was some sort of rub there. And so when they went, okay, well, if health is actually one of our core values, what does that mean to us, and how can we interact that and build our company culture activities into our DNA that really shows that we are congruent? So instead now,
Yep.
last Friday, there's a big basketball court out the back of Byron near where they work, and so they all went and played basketball, and then had a picnic where they got healthier food options. They still had a couple of drinks and all that, but it wasn't around like we just like that unhealthy. And I think that a lot of that comes from not laziness but non-intention, like because
Yeah.
we every other business, like, oh yeah, you go out for pizza and beer, or you go to the pub on a Friday, like that's culture. There's not been that intentional. I've gone all black, haven't I? There's not
Yeah.
that all intentional alignment to the values or the virtues, and how do you transmit that, and how do you live and breathe it within the team. And I think
Yeah.
even that, like by doing that, they're helping lower the stress levels. They're building the team bond and able to get out what it seemed like some of the frustrations that were in the office was able to be diffused by doing something on the court that was a bit more physical, and some of the frustrations sort of dissipated, but also better bonds were built because they had to, people that weren't in an actual team, but there were teams that had to work together. Once they had to be on a team, apparently, like this week has been crazy for them. Like there's people getting along better than they ever have, and so you don't have that reaction, because we were having a few things where people would just snap in the office and like have a go
Yep.
at somebody else, and that real like reactionary behavior rather than that chance to respond to what's happening.
Yeah. And so we know, to get into maybe some of the sexist stuff, is that males need both movement, exercise, but also the outside thing. So to de-stress for a male, and let's say a typical male, because we know that these things
Like me.
aren't, the golden rule. But when we when we when we're having troubles with boys, young boys, and particularly teenage pubescent boys, the most important thing for them is to connect with nature. And around that, particularly around that puberty stage, it's super critical that they can connect with nature in a way that suits them, because that's our primal instinct. you
Mm.
know as you go through that puberty stage, you are learning to hunt and collect and gather, and the whole village is supporting you, but your role is out in the fields and the plains, not cooped up
Playing video
with
games.
the women. Yeah, playing video games.
Probably prefer
Um,
them to be with the women at the moment.
I know that's a very sexist comment to make, but it's biology. We're not
Evolution.
talking about things that we're trying to put people in a box. What we're talking about is things that are actually scientifically proven that we need to do for boys. And so the idea of competition outside is perfect to diffuse situations.
Yeah, beautiful. Um, I'm just going to go to the competition thing for a second there. We actually, with this other business as well, decided that the competitive nature was something that we needed to remove, because it had got a little bit over into the alpha ego, um, and to like gone into the over competitive nature. So looking at how we can diffuse that, and how the values and the culture activities play to that, but knowing that there is still that competitive spirit. So how do you remove that necessarily from the team and their behavior internally, and still help them fulfill that need, but not going too far? Like not every single team building activity is about the competitive nature, and
Yeah,
someone's got to lose for somebody to win, because that's embedding that, but giving that valve release.
yeah, and just an outlet to have it. And it's super important that they do understand the losing and the winning,
Mm-hmm.
because there are good in both.
Yeah.
Um, I know. So my kids are having a really, or my eldest two are having a really tough soccer year this year. For the better part, they're usually losing in double digits. So, a really tough year. But it's really, really interesting to watch the other teams that, they get to 5 or 6 goals and they turn into a shit team. Really, really shit. Um, they get frustrated because they're being beaten all of a sudden. They're fatigued or whatever, and they can't. Instead of being able to score 6 goals in 5 minutes, they're scoring one, or they're not getting there, or they're getting shut down because our teams have switched on and they're doing better now, and they actually turn into shit teams. They fight, they backchat the referee, and this is consistent across 10 teams. Absolutely amazing.
I
So
stopped off there for a second because there was a guy with a foam board, like one of the foamy boards, and it's got to be, maybe it's only 5 foot, but he was balancing it on his face in the car park, like the whole board
nice.
balancing on his face. But that's really interesting though, right? If again, it's that learned behavior. So if one team's so used to, I was going to say bullying, but dominating their way through a process or using their assertive nature to get what they want, when the tables are turned, the reaction is, and they just don't. It's foreign. They don't know how to deal with it, and it's like, okay, well, what would be your advice to some of their coaches? What could they do to those teams?
They need to get them back to playing. Instead of playing for goals, they need to play for objectives and for outcomes. So, and this is whether you're winning or losing. This is actually probably the really important piece for a team. Is the ultimate goal is obviously to achieve whatever we want to achieve. And so in soccer, it's goals. We want to win goals. We want to score goals. If a team is quite literally that far up, then focus on the skills. Make the passes, make the touches, shut down the opposition. Be really, really strict in your set plays. So all of the other things that actually make you a much better team, while you're, let's say, coasting, focus on them rather than more goals, more goals, more goals. And then we're not getting that. We're not getting the extra goal. So now we're playing up and we're turning into 5-year-olds.
I think what that translates for me, if we think about business teams, is focus on the lead measures rather than the lag measures.
Yeah,
Get too
absolutely.
focused on the end result, and we try and leapfrog forward, or we're so used to getting a result that we've got lax on the things that in between. When something breaks, it's like, oh shit, now what? So if we can focus again on honing those skills, those little lead measures, to which are the stepping stones to get the ultimate result.
Yeah, because they're the things that serve us. They're the things that work for us. And I think as a coach, whether your team's winning or losing, if you're focusing on, the set play or holding a strong positions, or, even just making passes, they're the things that bring goals eventually. Like while you've got the ball on your feet and it's on the feet of your team, you're not conceding goals.
Yeah, if they can't score, they can't win, right?
That's right. That's right. So, it's just, as you say, focus on those lead measures. Focus on the things that are actually marching you step by step forward, rather than, we banked 150 grand in revenue this month, but next month we're going to tank because we thought we got 150 grand this month.
Yeah. And that happens all the time, doesn't it? And then
absolutely,
the following month, this is where we get back up into that state of break again, because you're back on the treadmill, and you get to the end of the month and it's breaking point.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, you just end up in a cycle. So, focus on those lead measures like we spoke about. So we squirreled off a little bit there. We went into soccer and all of those sorts of things.
I definitely often find the correlation between sport and teams, though, right? They're called teams.
Absolutely. So Legacy, about the All Blacks. Have you read that book, Legacy?
Not yet, no.
So it's a really good insight into why they are such a strong team. And it's not about the tries, it's not about scoring, it's about sweeping the sheds out and leaving it in a neat and tidy state when you leave your visitor sheds. It's about showing up on time. It's about presenting yourself well. So really, really good, while we're talking sport, a really good correlation between, doing the little things because they make the big things.
Oh, I like that. Actually, I think it might be on the bookshelf at home. I feel like the book's on the bookshelf. There's definitely a couple of All Blacks books there, being that
Yeah.
Steve's a Kiwi. So I probably appreciate me reading some more about them. But that sort of stuff really is important to me, and I love to read it for the correlation to building business culture and what we can look at. There's so many examples through like baseball and basketball and American football of where they were just losing teams and they didn't have the star players from the draft, but where they've defied all odds because they've taught them to work as a unit and play to the strengths of each of the individuals and understand, like, when to push the right buttons and not to push the wrong buttons to get like we talked a bit about button pushing before. Like, there is sometimes you need to push the button to get the best of someone, because the ultimate growth is on the other side of the button push. But you need to be there to guide someone through that. And as a business leader, this is why I really love doing the profiling and understanding our people more, doing the one-on-ones to understand who they are as a human and understand their background outside of work. Like what you were talking about before, understanding what one of your team members going through at home makes you understand what might be a trigger at work.
Yeah.
And also because you've got some experience in that space, able to go, okay, where can I push the button and maybe push them to the limit so they do have a reaction to get to the growth on the other side, so they've had enough, or they seek the help, or be there to hold the hand when it's time to jump into the abyss and face it.
And unfortunately, sometimes it fails as well.
It does. You can lead a horse to water.
You can lead a horse to water, but until people want to actually go through the growth, you won't necessarily force them to that, and that's okay as well. I think it's our responsibility as a leader to try and get the best out of our people. And sometimes, I think we spoke about this before. Sometimes that's not here.
100%. I had this discussion yesterday, I think, with one of my other clients. They've had a team member that's been amazing up until now. And like for the fast pace and the growth of the business and where they were going, and they didn't have set defined virtues and values, and they've had this explosion of growth. And now with that, obviously new team members and things like that. And looking at it, the new environment and the new values and the new way of operating isn't going to serve them to the best of their ability. It's triggering them all the time. And the absolute best thing to do for them is to help them to find somewhere else that is for them, because they can move on to somewhere else and get back into that, again, that startup, fast growth, where they really shine, where they really thrive, because they don't want to do the work yet on understanding that stuff, or transcending that competitive nature, or that ego and alpha. Like, they're not ready to do that work yet. It's fine. They're young and they can serve another business, and they'll feel the growth. And when they're ready, they'll know that the line of connection is still there to come back for the support.
Yeah. And set them free. Set them off to as you say, do their good work. Do it the best way they can.
Yeah. Because otherwise, if you try to conform them and force them into your way, they're going to feel small. Like, it's not going to make them feel lit up, and you can guide them as much, but if, like you said, if they're not ready, they're not ready.
Yeah, definitely. So we kind of squirreled off. I think we've taken 3 steps to the left now.
As we often do.
As we often do. We probably should come back and try and get back to maybe even a bit of a summary of what we were trying to get across. So we started talking about being in a place of response. So, we threw around the word the other day, response able. And for me, that word actually came from Nettie Lakovich, oh, probably a video or a podcast or something, where she was talking about the ability to respond, not react. And I really like that analogy of, response able. So, um, and, understanding the things that build up to allow us to be able to respond rather than react. And that's all, realistically, it's down to stresses. What are we doing to manage the stresses in our own world, in our own environment, and controlling the things that we can control rather than the things that we can't, because the things that we can't are always going to be there. We're always going to struggle with them. We're always going to have, you know, crazies in our world. We're always going to have, COVID in our world. We're always, like, all of those things are going to exist. They're always going to exist. But the things that we can control are things like moving, exercise, food, and then taking away the bad things out of our world that we can take away, like alcohol and smoking and all of that sort of stuff. And I don't think I'll go too far into that, because I'm sure Eric would love to talk for hours on those sorts of things.
Yeah, I'm sure he will.
And I think to preempt a little bit into Eric's thing, like probably the one thing that I remember the most from WildFit is, we look at grains, and the purpose of grains is to be pooped out by a bird. So they're, essentially what it is it's something that gives us discomfort and wants us to expel it. So when we want to make bread, what we do is we grind that up, that stress up, and we turn it into a really easily digestible stress, and we put it into our bodies. And without knowing it, what we've done is we've fed ourselves a stress over and over and over again. So I won't go too much more into that, because I'm sure Eric would love to talk about that. I don't know if it comes up or not, but
I hope so. I only have him for
it's
a finite time.
And it's those sorts of things that we might not necessarily understand is adding to our inability to respond.
Yeah, and I think just to circle back again, what we talked about, like what can we control within our team? Like, we can't control what they're doing outside of work, but we can control what happens inside of work, and how we can intersplice things like adding movement in, like whether you do a walking meeting instead of always doing stationary meetings, whether you do stand-ups instead of sit-downs, giving the opportunity to have a desk, providing like you said, like a basketball court. Or what can you do to encourage that extra movement? What can you do to lower the triggers? Like if it's in a team meeting, one of the things that I love that I think has really diffused the reactions is we've implemented into the team huddles the opportunity to say what worked and what didn't work. And and what I really love, and I was super impressed with the team this week, was when we had a reaction that somebody else was like, hey, let's end this on a positive. Can we do our gratitude thing again? Can we spread the love? Where can we recognize some people, knowing that, words of affirmation is a big one as well for some of them, and that recognition, and that it just completely dissolved the energy in the room. Like, the way that everyone left was so different to what it could have been if it was just left in that, like, but I don't feel like no one's respecting the fact that I need to know these things, and high energy. All of a sudden it was like, yeah, everyone's really helped. Like, we're doing this, and I've got this list of stuff that I'd like to see us work on, like the voice being there. Because like you said before about the meetings with a lot of the engineering guys, it's not about what celebrating the wins or what worked. It's coming in and it's like, whose fucking ass is going to get kicked right now?
Yeah.
And like, how can we, and a lot of managers, because that's what's been fed down to them, what they're modeling is they've always been yelled at, and a meeting's always been about butt kicking. There's, especially in your world, how many meetings start, like we start with an icebreaker or a breathwork session or an attitude of gratitude, rather than who stuffed up this week. But also,
who wants to bend over first?
Yeah. I'm ready. Right? It's giving them that voice, that platform as well, though. What worked, what didn't work, what can we iterate, what can we do? And it's not about a bitch session. It's not like that, if someone's got that bent up straw breaking, they haven't had a chance to be heard. It's more constructive, and it's like, what can we do to benefit the whole team, to benefit the whole customers, to benefit everyone around us. And
Yep.
I think that reduces those pressure moments of where they just snap.
Yep, definitely. So control what we can control in our world, control what we can for our teams. What's our last one?
Our world, team world, customer world.
Surf more.
Surf more. Always surf more. That's always going to be the answer. Oh, it's so glassy down there. And there's lines. It was like 6 to 8 foot on the point yesterday, which wasn't for me. I surfed Wodigos in the past. That was a fail. Well, I think we've got a nice wrap on that. We'd love to hear in the comments what you do to manage your own stresses, your thoughts on responding versus reacting, and how you can set yourself and your team up to be response able rather than reactionary.
Nice.
Awesome.
Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Awesome.